Shalom, shalom. Most High in Christ bless. Happy Sabbath to everybody. It is January 13th. We give all glory and honor to our Father in heaven. We give all glory and honor to Christ our King. We say shalom to the bishops, to the deacons, to the captains, the officers, the soldiers, every brother in their respective place. We say shalom to all the mothers, the wives, the daughters, the sisters, everyone in their respective place, to Israel as a whole. We say shalom, Most High in Christ bless, to every last one of you. Like and subscribe to the channel, like the video, reach out, see how you can be a part of Children of Israel Ministries. And we're going to read the laws like we always do. Generally, the reading, there's no commentary. We just simply read for the next generally 5 minutes or so. Then we're going to get into the topic. Okay. So with no further ado, let's read the laws. The laws, Ecclesiasticus chapter 39, verse 1. But he that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High and is occupied in the meditation thereof will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient and be occupied in prophecies. He will keep the sayings of the renowned men, and where subtle parables are, he will be there also. He will seek out the secrets of grave sentences and be conversant in dark parables. He shall serve among great men and appear before princes. He will travel to strange countries, for he hath tried the good and the evil among men.
He who has taken a wife, build a new home, or plant a vineyard, and is given a year to rejoice with his possessions. Deuteronomy 24:5. When a man hath taken a new wife, he shall not go out to war, neither shall he be charged with any business, but he shall be free at home 1 year, and shall cheer up his wife, which he hath taken.
Not to demand from the above any involvement, communal or military. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 5. When a man hath taken a new wife, he shall not go out to war, neither shall he be charged with any business, but he shall be free at home 1 year, and shall cheer up his wife which he hath taken.
Not to panic and retreat during battle. Deuteronomy 20:3. And shall say unto them, Hear, O Israel, ye approach this day unto battle against your enemies. Let not your heart faint. Fear not, and do not tremble, neither be ye terrified because of them.
Keep the laws of the captive woman. Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 11. And seest among the captives a beautiful woman, and hast a desire unto her, that thou wouldest have her to thy wife?
Not to sell a captive woman into slavery. Deuteronomy 21:14. And it shall be, if thou have no delight in her, then thou shalt let her go whether she will. But thou shalt not sell her at all for money. Thou shalt not make merchandise of her, because thou hast humbled her.
Not to retain a captive woman for servitude after having sexual relations with her. Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 14. And it shall be, if thou have no delight in her, then thou shalt let her go whether she will. but thou shalt not sell her at all for money. Thou shalt not make merchandise of her, because thou hast humbled her.
To know there is a God. Exodus 20:2. I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage.
To know that God is one. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord.
To love God. Deuteronomy 6:5. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might.
To fear God. Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 20. Thou shalt fear the Lord thy God, him shalt thou serve, and to him shalt thou cleave and swear by his name.
To sanctify God's name. Leviticus 22:32. Neither shall ye profane my holy name, but I will be hallowed. Thank you. I will be hallowed among the children of Israel. I am the Lord which hallow you.
Not to profane God's name. Leviticus chapter 22, verse 32. Neither shall ye profane my holy name, but I will be hallowed among the children of Israel. And I am the Lord which hallow you.
Not to destroy objects associated with God's name. Deuteronomy 12:2. Ye shall utterly destroy all the places wherein the nations which ye shall possess serve their gods, upon the high mountains, upon the hills, and under every green tree. And ye shall overthrow their altars, and break their pillars, and burn their groves. I'm sorry, I almost say gloves, groves with fire. And ye shall hew down the graven images of their gods, and destroy the names of them out of the place, of that place, I'm sorry. Ye shall not do so unto the Lord your God, but unto the place which the Lord your God shall choose out of all your tribes to put his name there, even unto the habitation shall ye seek, and thither thou shalt come.
All right, we will begin with number 8 next time, Lord willing. 8 next time, Lord willing. All right. So the title of today's class is The Everlasting Covenant. The Everlasting Covenant is the title of today's class, okay? We want to take a look at history here in America. Let's take a look at the history here in America. And the question is this. Let this be the opening question. From since the time that the Negro has been brought to this land as a slave to now. It's the first of the year, according to their calendar, 2024, January 13th. Have things improved substantially for the Negro since the time period of Civil War to now? Have things substantially improved for the Negro since the time period of Martin Luther King, Civil Rights Movement? Have things substantially improved for the Negro since the time period of Barack Obama? Have things substantially improved for the Negro? That's the question. That's the question, okay, that we want to drive today's class with. That's the question we want to drive today's class with. Let's go to this article. Okay. So here in this article, it's called, this is by Newsweek. Okay, let me enlarge it for folks at home. A timeline of racial progress in the US and the lack of it through the years. And the lack of it through the years. When was this article written? July 8th, 2020. So not even a full 4 years to date. Okay. George Floyd, right? A poster holds a sign reading, "I can't breathe," outside the district attorney's office during a peaceful demonstration over George Floyd's death on June 3rd, 2020 in Los Angeles, California, right? The only way you are not familiar with this event right here, you was just born. You're too young. You're 4 years old to recall, to remember, to be cognizant of this event. Otherwise, you recall this event. You remember this event. The article says, it seems like it takes something truly horrible, like the death of Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, to remind Americans how persistent and pervasive racism is in America. Now, you know, this word racism, all too often, we have a poor understanding of what this word means. Racism. You're a racist. You're a racist. You hear people of your own racial, ethnic group, right? Because on the surface, those of you who are watching this video and who have been watching this video, you have subscribed to the channel, and therefore you know that, like myself, I don't identify as Black, African-American, Negro. I identify as an Israelite. And I identify as an Israelite from the tribe of Judah, to be specific. But to those who may be viewing this for the first time, you see me on the screen and you say, that's a Black man. That's an African-American. That's a light-skinned Negro, right? Or maybe because, again, this is your first time seeing me on the screen, you might even say, that brother is mixed. One of his parents is Caucasian, you know, or he's you're right, or he's Puerto Rican. Something to that effect might be how you perceive me without knowing. That might be the assumption you make because you have not been informed, and you're basing your judgment on what I look like on the screen. But so now I'm telling you, now I've told you, nope, I'm an Israelite from the tribe of Judah. Okay? Now, I have too many times experienced, you know, folks say to me, Michael, you're a racist. Or simply ask, Michael, you must be a racist. Are you racist? Let's read the definition of racism, and then let's entertain that question. Am I racist? Okay. Definition number one. Oh, okay. A belief or doctrine that inherent differences among various human racial groups determine cultural or individual achievement, usually involving the idea that one's own race is superior and has the right to dominate others, or that a particular racial group is inferior to others. Well, if we entertain the question, Michael, are you racist? Well, even if I believe that my racial group is superior, my racial group as a collective, it does not have the right. It doesn't have the strength. It doesn't have the might to dominate others. Okay, so there's that check mark. Let's look at definition number two. Also called institutional racism, a policy, system of government, etc., that is associated with or originated in such a doctrine and that favors members of the dominant racial or ethnic group or has a neutral effect on their life experiences, while discriminating against or harming members of other groups, ultimately serving to preserve the social status, economic advantage, or political power of the dominant group. Well, we look at the census in America, because I'm in America, and if you consider me Negro, African American, Black, and you go to the census using one of those terms, last I looked, my racial group makes up about 14% of the American population. That's not the dominant group. My racial group does not hold such political positions in government and commerce and business that by and by we can say, Johnny, you're hired. Charles, you're not hired. We don't hold that kind of position. Johnny being he of my racial kinship, Charles being he that is not my racial kinship. Right? So just from the definition, and we entertain the question, Michael, are you racist? I can't. By the definition we just read, it is impossible for me to be racist. It's impossible. Okay? Back to the article. It says, to remind Americans how persistent and pervasive racism is in America. Well then, who has the wherewithal, the might to be racist? That's the dominant group by definition. The dominant group. Who is the dominant group? A friendly neighborhood white man. Your friendly neighborhood white man is the dominant group. He is the one, when I say he, I'm talking about man, woman, child. He is the one that is in position to exercise racism. No other group, by definition, no other group is in position to exercise racism in America or anywhere else for that matter. Let's go on. It shouldn't be a surprise. Slavery and racism are woven into the history of our country. Even the U.S. Constitution, perhaps the most profound and foresighted political document in human history, required an awkward workaround to deal with slavery, agreeing to count slaves as 3/5 of a human. It's impossible to look at that compromise with modern eyes and not be revulsed. It took the bloodiest war in American history to defeat the Confederacy and end slavery, the Civil War, 1863 to 1865. And a century and a half later, we're still arguing about whether to take down the Confederate battle flag. This is mine. I didn't write this. This is Newsweek. Here are some, not all, of the seminal events in America's journey toward racial fairness. It seems progress that has been frustratingly slow and painfully hard won. For example, the signing into law of the Civil Rights Act of 1968 and the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King occurred in the same week. It seems as if it's a case of 2 steps forward, then 1 step back, or perhaps even step and a half forward, then 1 step back. After the Civil War and Reconstruction came the nightmare of Jim Crow with segregation, lynchings, and race riots of white men attacking African-American communities. There was tremendous progress from World War II through the 60s, followed by a backlash during the 70s and 80s. And those of you who lived through those time periods, your mind can remember pivotal moments when you turned on the news or when you were not even fortunate enough, but you were able to listen to the radio and hear what was going on in society in that day. When I say fortunate enough, I mean materially, you did not have radios and TVs in your own house. So you heard the news at a neighbor's house. You heard the news while walking down the sidewalk and peering through Mr. Taylor's, store, because he had all the TV models on the store for sale, and you were standing there at the bus stop, shall we say, or maybe you were walking down to go buy some penny candy, and you witnessed these events as they played out. You were alive when these events took place. The election of Barack Obama created optimism that we'd become a post-racial society. But as with so many times before, recent events show we're not there yet. With retirement of the Mississippi flag, the stars and bars no longer flies over a state house. Although, as always, there's work left to do. 6 state flags with Confederacy's symbology still fly. While Black Americans are mindful of the role of racism in America, most would also agree that meaningful change has occurred. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution, Brown versus Board of Education, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the War on Poverty, and other acts signified that Americans have tried to ameliorate some of the awful and wretched things that African Americans have confronted. Moreover, despite the serious flaws inherent in the American project, it is also the case that we believe America can do better. Otherwise, why push toward freedom and justice? Right? So you believe this is what the author of this article says, that we believe America can do better. Okay? Here are some of the important events, good and bad, on the long march for racial justice in America. For racial justice in America. But you know, this is loaded in and of itself. Racial justice. How do you get justice? That's a question for another time. That's a question for another time. All right. So here they've laid out this chart. We're going to look at this chart. Okay. Racial progress in America, the slow march forward. That what you see in kind of red, orange, that's taking a step back. That we see in blue is taken as correct. I didn't see if it was a he or a she. This is a she. Oh, no. By Carolyn Calloway Thomas and Sam Hill. So 2 authors wrote this. Okay, so in the blue, they said, you know, it's as if they took a step and a half forward and then a step back. All right, let's start off. We start off with the Emancipation Proclamation, 1863. Abraham Lincoln said the slaves are free. Why did he do that, though? So that he could win. So that he could win the war. Abraham Lincoln was not in favor of freeing the slaves. He did not care to free the slaves. He cared about winning that war. That's what he cared about. Let's go on. 1863 to 1865, 180,000 men fight for freedom as part of colored troops. We have a beautiful photograph, right? Then 1865, the 13th Amendment. Slaves are freed. Part of the Constitution now. Because, you know, the First Amendment to the 12th Amendment, that was for all, when it says all men are created equal, that wasn't talking about Negroes or any other people for that matter. That was talking about Caucasians. Article 1 to Article 12 is solely for white America. The 13th Amendment, the next amendment to the Constitution, is solely for Negroes. But then it gets polluted, perverted. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment now is for gays, folks that have handicaps, folks in wheelchairs, for lesbians, for other racial ethnic groups. And I'm not arguing this way, that way, that way concerning those particular issues, but the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment were specific to the atrocities that came on the Negro in his time of bondage on this soil. So just as they created the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment for the Negro, they could create 19th, 20th, 30th, 45th Amendment, 60th Amendment, 100th Amendment, however many for those other issues. They didn't have to attach those issues and say, oh, let's interpret the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment to tackle these issues. No, they did not have to do that. Let's continue. Okay, we're still in blue. We're still in blue. We're being happy. We're being happy right now. 1868, the 14th Amendment, citizenship for former slaves and equal protection. But then that same year, former CSA states began passing black codes, better known as Jim Crow laws. So the black codes were codes designed to keep the Negro in a subservient position. It was a workaround of the 13th and 14th Amendment. It was a way to skate around the obstacle in which the 13th and 14th Amendment created. Okay, back to happy times. 1870, the 15th Amendment, the right to vote. Now we can go and we can share in power. That's what the right to vote means. We can send delegates, people that look like me, to go and represent my concerns, my ideas. 1875, Civil Rights Act, equal public accommodations, right? Bathrooms, drinking fountains, schools, etc. Then 1896, no, Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal. No. Yeah, you can ride on this trolley, Negro, but you gotta pay at the front and then enter at the back and exit at the back and stay at the back. That's what you got to do. Yeah, you can come to this restaurant, but you got to come around the back, and we will take your money and we'll give you scraps at the back, but we ain't letting you in through the front door. Okay, how much money you have? Separate but equal. In 1896, the Supreme Court of the United States, 1875 Act, unconstitutional. Okay, what was 1875? Civil Rights Act. They said that's unconstitutional. Having equal public accommodations, that's unconstitutional. And then in 1906, Brownsville affair, 167 Buffalo soldiers falsely accused and unfairly discharged. Let's continue on. 1908, Springfield, Illinois, 5,000 whites riot and lynch 8 blacks. 1915, Birth of a Nation movie shown in the White House to Woodrow Wilson. 1918, birth of the KKK. 1919, soldiers return from World War I. You let the Negro back in the military services. 1920s, we had the Harlem Renaissance. Okay. We're starting to rise. We on top. But just 1 year later, 1921, riot destroys Tulsa, Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, where they literally dropped a bomb to destroy the neighborhood. In 1919, Red Summer, hundreds die at hands of white supremacists in riots, Elaine, Arkansas massacre. And this Red Summer, this was not in just one place. This was happening in Chicago, in Detroit, in California, in Missouri, East St. Louis. This was happening all over. 1882 to 1928, 3,445 black men lynched. Think about that. Okay, back to some happy times. We're taking some steps forwards, 1.5 steps forward. 1945, 3 African-American fight in World War II. 1947, Jackie Robinson joins the Brooklyn Dodgers. Breaks the color barrier into Major League Sports. 1948, Truman desegregates armed forces by executive order. Okay. 1954, Brown versus Board of Education. Supreme Court of the United States rules segregation unconstitutional. You would almost think that the highest court of the land has some kind of schizophrenia. They say it's okay, then they say it's not okay, then they say it's okay again. What's wrong? 1955, 15-year-old Claudette Colvin and later Rosa Parks refused to move to the back of the bus. So we have the bus sit-in, right? Where they say, you know, we'll walk. We ain't getting on your bus. But in 1955, that same year, all-white jury acquits 2 men of lynching 14-year-old Emmett Till in Mississippi. And of course, we've seen this story all too often in the last 10 years. In the last, from 2014, 2012 to 2024 right now, this still happens. Police officers are acquitted day in and day out. We know we'll make them wear body cameras, but that doesn't help. And then when the judge, the black judge, says, you know, well, I gotta arrest you. I gotta give you time. The judge comes off her bench, off her seat to go embrace the Caucasian officer who has been sentenced. Let's continue. Please don't hear this as a message of hatred. Please don't hear the tone, the tenor in my voice. Oh, that brother, he mad, he angry, he's bitter. No, please don't do that. Please don't do that. 1957, Little Rock 9, Eisenhower federalizes National Guard to enforce desegregation. 1961, Freedom Riders. 1963, March on Washington, I Have a Dream speech by Reverend King. And then that same year, 1963, Birmingham church bombing. 1964, Civil Rights Act. 1964, Mississippi burning, murders. 1965, Malcolm X assassinated. 1965, we get Voting Rights Act. 1968, Martin Luther King assassinated. 1968, Fair Housing Act. Fair Housing Act. When, you know, they have this thing called redlining. And they would use maps. And, you know, if you lived in the red portion of the map, you couldn't get a loan to get a house. You didn't have the right qualifications. 1972, Shirley Chisholm, the first major Black candidate for president. 1978, Alan Bake sues University of California or UC Davis, challenges affirmative action. 1986, Anti-Drug Abuse Acts introduces mandatory sentencing leading to mass incarceration. 1990, FBI ordered to start tracking hate crimes. 1991, Rodney King beaten by police in LA riots. 1994, Hate Crimes Sentencing Act. 1995, Million Man March. 2007, iPhone with camera launched. I don't know how that is a step in the right way for justice for Black Americans. I guess now we can videotape. Maybe that's why they threw that in there. I didn't create this. 2008, Barack Obama elected the 44th president of the United States. But in 2012, Trayvon Martin shot by a vigilante because he was walking around with a red hoodie, Skittles, and an Arizona tea. I believe it was an Arizona tea. And he got off George Zimmerman. 2013, Black Lives Matter movement starts. 2014, Michael Brown killed by police in Ferguson, Missouri. I came back from Chicago from doing street preaching and whatnot, doing the ministry. That weekend, that Sunday, when I got back home, that Sunday is when I had heard about what had happened just the day before. And I was told that the young man had laid in the street for some 5 hours. And whether or not that is the case, I don't know. That's what was told to me when I got back the next day, though. 2019, 264 Black men killed by police. 264 Black men killed by police. Then 2020, George Floyd killed by police in Minneapolis. 2020, Mississippi retires state flag with stars and bars. Okay, so we've seen some timelines, but it ain't over. Let's see some more. Let us examine some more. Let's go to this next article. Now, here is the Smithsonian Magazine, okay? And I'm trying. Please bear with my computer. There we go. All right. Okay. So this article comes, is this the article? Yeah. Bear with me. Bear with me. Hold tight. Hold tight. Wait a minute. Don't give up on me. Don't give up on me. I think this is some interesting stuff. You just stick around with me. Okay. All right. Let's get this back. Let's get this party going again. Trying to pull it up for us. Here we go. Here we go. All right. Again, this is from the Smithsonian Magazine. It's dated. Don't you love how they just throw all these advertisements on your screen? It's dated June 4th, 2020. It's titled 158 Resources to Understand Racism in America. These articles, videos, podcasts, and websites from the Smithsonian chronicle the history of anti-Black violence and inequality in the United States. All right. And so here is what this woman, Milan Soli, here's what she has to say concerning all this stuff. Okay. In a short essay published earlier this week, Smithsonian Secretary Lonnie G. Bunch wrote that the recent killing in Minnesota of George Floyd has forced the country to confront the reality that despite gains made in the past 50 years, we are still a nation riven by inequality and racial division. That's what this one writer, Lonnie G. Bunch, that's what he wrote, a Black guy. He goes on and says, amid escalating clashes between protesters and police discussing race from the inequality embedded in American institutions to United States long, painful history of anti-Black violence is an essential step in sparking meaningful societal change. To support those struggling to begin these difficult conversations, the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture recently launched a Talking About Race portal featuring tools and guidance for educators, parents, caregivers, and other people committed to equity. To equity. Okay? So here we have. Let's go. Talking about race. We don't want Rosa Parks. Talking about race joins a vast trove of resources from the Smithsonian Institution dedicated to understanding what Bunch describes as America's tortured racial past. From Smithsonian Magazine articles on slavery's Trail of Tears and the disturbing resilience of scientific racism to the National Museum of American History's collection of Black History Month resources for educators and a side door podcast on the Tulsa Race Massacre, these 158 resources are designed to foster an equal society, encourage commitment to unbiased choices, and promote anti-racism in all aspects of life. Now, I didn't write this. These are not my thoughts. What I'm mainly after in this article is the fact that there are 158 resources, okay? That's really what I'm after, okay? And so some of this stuff that we are going to read, well, you be the judge. Historical context. Between 1525 and 1866, 12.5 million people were kidnapped from Africa and sent to the Americas through the transatlantic slave trade. Only 10.7 million survived the harrowing 2-month journey. Comprehending the sheer scale of this forced migration, and slavery's subsequent spread across the country via interregional trade can be a daunting task. But as historians Leslie Harris told Smithsonian's Amy Crawford earlier this year, framing these big concepts in terms of individual lives can help you better understand what these things mean. Shackles put around your hands, put around your feet. Shackles put around your neck. Shackles put around your face to cover your mouth. Shackles. Take, for instance, the story of John Kaser, originally an indentured servant of African descent. Kaser lost a 1655 or 1655, 64 or 65 court case convened to determine whether his contract had lapsed. He became the first individual declared a slave for life in the United States. Manuel Vidot, a Yoruba man who was captured and sold to traders some 200 years after Kasur's enslavement, later shared an account of his life with the British and Foreign Anti-Slavery Society, which documented his remarkable story after a decade of enslavement in Cuba. He purchased a share in a lottery ticket and won enough money to buy his freedom. In records now available on the digital database, Freedom Narratives, a separate similar document-based online resource emphasizes individuals described in fugitive slave ads, which historian Joshua Rothman describes as sort of a little biography, providing insights on their subjects. Finally, consider the life of Matilda McCreer, the last known survivor of the transatlantic slave trade, kidnapped from West Africa and brought to the U.S. on the Clotilda. She arrived in Mobile, Alabama in July 1860, more than 50 years after Congress had outlawed the import of enslaved labor. Because it was in 1808, 1804, when imported slavery had come to an end. And that was only because Virginia, Thomas Jefferson, had created in Virginia slave breeding plantations. So if you were to acquire any slaves, you would have to come to Virginia to purchase your slaves. So let's tell the whole story. Nothing against the author here with Smithsonian Magazine. But let's carry on. McCreer, who died in 1940 at the age of 81 or 82, displayed a determined, even defiant streak. In her later life, wrote Brigitte Katz earlier this year. She refused to use her former owner's last name, wore her hair in traditional Yoruba style, and had a decades-long relationship with a white German man. Okay, well, that's what she chose to do. Here she is. Matilda McCreer died in 1940 at the age of 81 and 82. Or she was 81 or 82. How American society remembers and teaches the horrors of slavery is crucial. But as recent studies have shown, many textbooks offer a sanitized view of this history, focusing solely on positive stories about Black leaders like Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass. Prior to 2018, Texas schools even taught that states' rights and sectionalism, not slavery, were the main causes of the Civil War. Well, there's some truth there. It really was, slavery was not really the whole thing of why Civil War happened. So there's some truth there. And in Confederate memorials across the country, writes historian Kevin M. Levine, enslaved individuals are often falsely portrayed as loyal slaves. Right? Accurately representing slavery might require an updated vocabulary, argued historian Michael Landis in 2015. Outdated terms like compromise or plantation served either to reassure worried Americans in a Cold War world or uphold a white supremacist, sexist interpretation of the past, rather than referring to the compromise of 1850. Call it the appeasement of 1850, a term that better describes the uneven nature of the agreement according to Landis. Okay. So compromise of 1850. Right, so these are some of the things, and here is a photograph. Here's a family in the cotton field, right? Children, women and children in cotton field, 1860s, 1860s, okay? To better understand I do want to go back to this compromise. I apologize. This compromise of 1850. I do want to share that. Okay. The day Henry Clay refused to compromise, the great pacificator was adept at getting congressmen to reach agreements over slavery, but he was less accommodating when one of his own slaves sued him. Okay, here's the author, December 6, 2012. Here is the man in question. Check this out. This guy, Henry Clay, to this day, he is considered one of the most influential politicians in U.S. history. His role in putting together the Compromise of 1850, a series of resolutions limiting the expansion, this is that taking a step and a half forward, limiting the expansion of slavery, delayed secession for a decade, and earned him the nickname, the Great Pacificator. Indeed, Mississippi Senator Henry S. Foote later said, had there been one such man in Congress of the United States as Henry Clay in the 1860s and 61, there would, I feel sure, have been no Civil War. Oh, okay, great man. He held out. Clay himself owned 60 slaves. Yet he called slavery this great evil, the darkest spot in the map of our country. So that's, taking a step and a half forward and one step back. He was taking a step and a half forward to say, it's an evil. I'm gonna hold out. But he was taking a step backwards in that he owned 60 slaves. Why didn't he cash in his money, since his money was tied into his property, slaves? Why didn't he cash in and get his money back? Since he was so convicted in his thoughts. Okay, let's continue on. That's enough about him. You can read this in your own if you choose to. Let's go back. All right, we looked at that. Okay. To better understand the immense brutality ingrained in enslaved individuals' everyday lives, read up on Louisiana's Whitney Plantation Museum, which acts as part reminder of the scars of institutional bondage, part mausoleum for dozens of enslaved people who worked and died in its sugar fields, and monument to the terror of slavery, as Jared Keller observed in 2016. So you can go to this place and you can see the setup. You can witness the setup. Visitors begin their tour in a historic church populated by clay sculptures of children who died on the plantation's ground, then move on to a series of granite slabs engraved with hundreds of enslaved African Americans' names scattered throughout the experience are stories of the violence inflicted by overseers. You can go there. You can see these things. Okay? Here, slave market in Atlanta, Georgia. This was the market. Though Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, the decree took 2.5 years to fully enact. June 19th, 1865, the day Union General Gordon Granger informed the enslaved individuals of Galveston, Texas, that they were officially free, is now known as Juneteenth. America's second Independence Day, according to, I didn't catch what this stands for, so forgive me. NMAAHC, initially celebrated mainly in Texas. Juneteenth spread across the country as African Americans fled the South in what is now called the Great Migration. Let's journey on, okay? Systematic inequality. Okay. Racial, economic, and educational disparities are deeply entrenched in U.S. institutions. Though the Declaration of Independence states that all men are created equal, but remember what I said earlier, that was not talking about Negroes. I was talking about Caucasian men, not Negroes. American democracy has historically and often violently excluded certain groups. Democracy means everybody can participate. It means you are sharing power with people you don't know, don't understand, might not even like, said National Museum of American History curator Harry Rubenstein in 2017. That's the bargain. And some people over time have felt very threatened by that notion. How dare a darky be on the same position as me? That's how they talk. Instances of inequality range from the obvious to the less overt discriminatory policies and belief systems. Historical examples of the former include poll taxes. Poll taxes. Well. Poll taxes. Recalling an error there we go. Recalling an era when color of your skin meant you paid to vote. Okay, March 18th, 2016. Look at this, right? Poll tax receipt, 1955. Okay, Lee Carr went and paid so that he, oh, this is a white woman. Poll tax, is that right? Citizen born, female, race, white, the sum of 50 cents. In January 1955 in Hardin County, Texas, Leo Carr had to pay $1.50 to vote. So there's the understanding. If I couldn't understand the receipt, I can understand the words. That receipt for Carr's poll tax now resides in the collections of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. In today's dollar, Carr paid roughly $13 to exercise his democratic right, his American civic duty to vote for the direction he believes America should be going. $13. It's a day's wage, explains William Pretzer, the museum's senior history curator. You're asking someone to pay a day's wage in order to be able to vote. So now that $13, we got to change that to something like a day's wage among Blacks in America. A day's wage is anywhere from $80 to $200 for a day's wage. So that poll tax was anywhere from $80 to $200. Talking about the average Black American. For some of you Black Americans, you up there. Let's continue. Here are Blacks being mistreated after coming back. Oh, let me just read. An undated stereograph of Black soldiers returning from France after fighting in World War I. Okay. Here we are here's the 7 of the Little Rock Nine, including Melba, Patilio Beals, Carletta Walls, Lanier, Jefferson Thomas, Elizabeth Eckford, Thelma, Mother Shared Ware, Terrence Roberts, and Gloria Ray Kalmark meet at the home of Daisy Bates. Okay? Meet at the home of Daisy Bates. And look at that. You notice something? The women in this photograph have on dresses. There's a distinction in how they present themselves in public. Women have on dresses, men have on pants. Interesting. Let's continue on. Okay. Here we go. Now we get to some more interesting stuff. The 1968, the Kerner Commission, a group convened by President Lyndon Baines Johnson, found that white racism, not Black anger, was the impetus for the widespread civil unrest sweeping the nation. As Alice George wrote in 2018, the commission's report suggested that bad policing practices, a flawed justice system, unscrupulous consumer credit practices, poor or inadequate housing, high unemployment, voter suppression, and other culturally embedded forms of racial discrimination all converge to propel violent upheaval. Few listened to the findings, let alone its suggestion of aggressive government spending aimed at leveling the playing field. Instead, the country embraced a different cause, space travel. The day after the 1969 moon landing, the leading Black paper, the New York Amsterdam News, ran a story stating, "Yesterday, the moon, tomorrow, maybe us." Right? Well, what did the findings find out? I want to know. Oh, here we go. Now, study shows little change since Kerner Commission reported on racism 50 years ago. An update to the landmark study finds there is now more poverty and segregation in America. This is by Jason Daly, who wrote this March 2nd, 2018. Let's see what he says. Here's a scene in Detroit, 1967. This is, another riot after Red Summer. Half a century ago, a special commission assembled by President Lyndon Johnson was tasked to better understand the cause of racial unrest in the nation. The result was the landmark 176-page report, The America of Racism, better known as the Kerner Report. The massive undertaking done by National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders, headed by Otto Kerner, then governor of Illinois, examined cultural and institutional racism in the United States, from segregated schools and neighborhoods to housing discrimination, cycles of poverty, and lack of employment opportunities. So what did they find out? As Smithsonian.com's Alice George reports, the historic study came to the conclusion that it was white racism, not Black anger, that had led to the wide-scale riots that had broken out in poor African-American neighborhoods throughout the country. White society, the panel reported, is deeply implicated in the ghetto. White institutions created it. White institutions maintain it, and white society condones it. Now, a new study called Healing Our Divided Society, investigating in America 50 years after the Kerner Report by Milton Eisenhower Foundation, which has continued the Kerner Commission's work, returns to the study to look at how far the U.S. has come since Kerner's days. As Karen Grigsby Bates at NPR reports, this week, a 488-page book study concluded that we haven't come very far at all. So we go from 100 and some odd page to a 488-page. So more words, more findings, more evidence, only to say we have not come far at all. She says, Karen Grigsby Bates, she says, we made progress on virtually every aspect of race and poverty for nearly a decade after the Kerner Report, and then that progress slowed, then stopped, and in many ways was reversed, so that today racial and ethnic discrimination is again worsening. We are resegregating our cities and our schools, condemning millions of kids to inferior education, and taking away their real possibility of getting out of poverty. Fred Harris, the last surviving member of the Kerner Commission, said during a talk at George Washington University on Tuesday, I apologize. This was Fred Harris who said this. My apology. Statistics tell the story. Bear with me. Tell the story. In 1988, about 44% of Black children went to majority white schools. But that was also the same year that courts began reversing desegregation policies. Now that number has dropped to 20%. You know, maybe anecdotal. I went to a school in the time period that I was going to school, this number, this 44%, that was about the reality that was for me in the time that I was in school. And now, as a teacher, as a certified educator, working in the school system, this 20% is smaller. This is a smaller number. And over the course of 12 years, I have been in 3 different buildings. And 3 different buildings. Maybe the building number one, it was probably maybe 60-40 whites to black or black to white. But then now the other 2 buildings that I have been in, it is easy 95, 98 to 5 or 3 black to white. There are other sobering statistics. As the AP points out, the study shows that following the passage of the Fair Housing Act in 1968, home ownership by Black Americans jumped around 6%. Those gains, however, reversed between 2000 and 2015 when Black ownership dropped by 6%. Yeah, because 2008 was the housing crash. 2008, it was the Negro who was the primary individual affected by the loans from the banks, the predatory loans that we hear so much about, where the interest rate, that when the bubble hit, it was the Black person who got hit the hardest. The study also found that in 2016, the number of people living in deep poverty, defined by the U.S. Census Bureau as a household with total cash income below 50% of its poverty threshold, was 16% percentage points higher than it was in 1975. So we have more people impoverished. Meanwhile, the number of U.S. Children living in poverty has climbed from 15.6% in 1968 to 21% in 2017. The Economic Policy Institute, which released its own study on the 50th anniversary of Kerner Commission's finding, reports that in 2017, Black unemployment was higher than it was in 1968. And it remained around twice the rate of white unemployment. The rate of incarcerated individuals who are Black also tripled since the 1968 report came out. And the wealth gap also has increased. Today, the median white family has 10 times the wealth of the median Black family. All this means the conditions that the Kerner report suggested led to the frustration that poured out in riots throughout many poor African-American neighborhoods during the 1960s are still present today. back when the Kerner report was released, it was, in fact, more or less ignored by the Johnson administration. The president reportedly felt the commission did not give him enough credit for his Great Society programs. Additionally, as Julian Zedzer argues in The Atlantic, the study was politically toxic. The report made recommendations for massive investments in employment, education, and housing that Johnson knew would never move through Congress. Zelizer writes. That's how you say his name. While the government did not address it, the study nevertheless became a paperback bestseller, setting off new conversations in the public around race, poverty, and inequality, with its conclusion that our nation is moving toward two societies, one black, one white, separate and unequal. The 2018 report wants to open that conversation up again. As Harris tells Bates of NPR, he was 37 years old when he worked on the Kerner report. Whoever thought that 50 years later, we'd still be talking about the same thing, he says. That's kind of sad. All right. Okay. Moving on. Moving on. And you can, read more of those articles if you choose to. Then you had scientific racism, where eugenics, just because I'm white, my head is shaped, my brain is bigger, this, that, and the third, yada, 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 yada. That was the attitude. Lynching. I do want to entertain the lynching. Okay. Lynching is a problem. Let's go here.
In 1989, about 25% of people executed in the United States were executed in the state of Alabama. We had dozens of people on death row who did not have legal representation. There were no institutions providing legal services to condemn people. If you don't have a right to counsel, and you don't have any money, and you're on death row, you're going to be executed.
Stunning that a country that's so dedicated to incarceration as a solution for its problems knows so little about who we lock up, why, and for how long.
And people on death row that had no help, had no assistance. If we didn't work on the cases, no one was going to work on the cases.
So in this video, talking about the folks who are in Alabama, put in jail, no reason at all, and they get sent to death row. They get sent to death row. Okay, and that Alabama being one of the biggest participants. Okay, so mass incarceration. At this site, he also, this site is Equal Justice Initiative. Okay, so this is the site, and they also have this very interesting map. Racial terror lynching. Racial terror lynchings were not limited to the South, but the Southern states had the most in the nation, over 4,000 between 1877 and 1950. In 1950. Okay, so Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, right? All these places. Out here in California, lynchings. Up here in Montana, lynchings. Up here in North Dakota, lynchings. Up here in Minnesota, lynchings. So check out this website. Check out this website. Okay. All right. So now let's get to some scriptures. Let's go to Wisdom of Solomon. And we want chapter 9, verses 1 through 3. And it reads, O God of my fathers and Lord of mercy, who has made all things with thy word and ordained man through thy wisdom, that he should have dominion over the creatures which thou hast made, and order the world according to equity and righteousness, and execute judgment with an upright heart. O God of my fathers. Who wrote this? Solomon wrote this. Who was Solomon? An Israelite of the tribe of Judah. A black man was Solomon. A black man was Solomon. He says, and order the world according to equity and righteousness. Those documents we read, there's no equity. There's no righteousness. Okay? Let's go to Deuteronomy. Chapter 32. We want verses 1 through 9. It reads, Give ear, O ye heavens, and I will speak, and hear, O earth, the words of my mouth. My doctrine shall drop as the rain, my speech shall distill as the dew, as the small rain upon the tender herb, and as the showers upon the grass. Because I will publish the name of the Lord. Ascribe ye greatness unto our God. He is the rock. His work is perfect. For all his ways are judgment. A God of truth and without iniquity. Just and right is he. They have corrupted themselves. Their spot is not the spot of his children. They are a perverse and crooked generation. Do ye thus requite the Lord, O foolish people and unwise? Is not thy father that hath bought thee? Hath he not made thee and established thee? Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask thy father, and he will show thee. Thy elders, and they will tell thee. When the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. For the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. Okay? Up here at verse 5. it says, they have corrupted themselves. Who is the they in this passage? Who? Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 29. For I know that after my death, this is Moses speaking, you will utterly corrupt yourselves and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you. Who did he command? Who was he speaking to? To the nation of Israel. All 12 tribes were present. And evil will befall you in the latter days. In the latter days, meaning in the end. As we get closer and closer and closer to the end of it all. At this point in time, all things have not yet been fulfilled. Because ye will do evil in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger through the work of your hands. So in Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 5, in Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 5, they have corrupted themselves. The they is talking about the children of Israel. The they is talking about the children of Israel. Talking about you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Okay. Go to, then it says, their spot is not the spot of his children. What do you mean by that? Their spot is not the spot of his children. Go to John chapter 8. We want verses 41 through 42. Ye do the deeds of your father. Then said they to him, we be not born of fornication. We have one Father, even God. Look at the arrogance of the scribes and the Pharisees. Verse 42. Jesus said unto them, if God were your Father, ye would love me. For I proceeded forth and came from God. Neither came I of myself, but he sent me. Right? He says, if you were of your Father, if you were of your Father, if you following God, if God is your head, he says, if ye would love me. And if you love Jesus Christ, let's go to the Gospel of John. Chapter 14, verse 15. Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 15. Here's what Jesus Christ says. If ye love me, keep my commandments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words in this passage. 7 words. Doesn't take a lot to provide an understanding of what these words mean. I don't, it's not a matter of, that's your interpretation, Brother Michael. How so? Seems pretty plain to me. If ye love me, keep my commandments. Why would Christ say, keep my commandments, if it's impossible to keep the commandments? Why would he say that? It's a setup for failure if that's the case. No, he said it because it's possible. He said it because he wants you to keep the commandments. If you love him, keep the commandments. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15. Because we just read a bunch of stuff, a bunch of articles, just painting a very grim, gruesome, horrific picture of our ancestors and our contemporaries, our kindred that live now being put to death by the hands, by the systematic, by the systematic system of racism. I know that was kind of jacked up, but understand me. By racism. A knee in the neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, that's not racism. Fleeing an officer unarmed and you get shot in the back, that's not racism. Telling a police officer that you do have a firearm in the vehicle and here is your credentials and you get gunned down, that's not racism. Attempting to sell your house and the appraiser for the county, for the municipality, what have you, comes out and appraises your house. And then, you don't trust it. So you decorate the house as if a Caucasian owns the house. And then an appraiser comes out and appraises the house and it appraises 100, 200,000 more. That's not racism. Why are all these things happening? Why? Well, look, we just read Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 5. We just read Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 29. We just read the Gospel of John, chapter 8, verse 41 through 42, and the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 15. So let's get something a little more definitive to answer the question, why are we experiencing these things? Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. We refuse to observe and do the commandments as they are presented to us. We won't do them. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 47 through 50. Because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things. Why? Because there was a time the Lord had given us, had blessed us. We were in our heaven. Our nation was thriving, doing well. Verse 48. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. And we're destroyed people. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth. What nation uses the eagle? The Caucasian nation uses the eagle. America uses the eagle. The Spanish use the eagle. A nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Our native tongue is Hebrew. Caucasians, well, they spoke the English that we speak, that's Germanic. German and Hebrew don't come, or that they don't belong to the same family tree. Verse 50. A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. Just because you old and gray hair, you think that this man cares about you? You think you young, he cares about you, huh? Yeah, right. Yeah, right. He doesn't care nothing about you. Let's go to Deuteronomy. Actually, I want to look at this right here, verse 48. I said he cares nothing. Verse 48, it says, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies. 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 Let's go to to Psalms. Psalms chapter 83. Verse 1. Keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, children of Israel, and consulted against thy hidden ones, children of Israel. They have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation. That's why we don't call ourselves Israelites anymore. That's why we don't call ourselves the nation of Israel no more. We call ourselves African American. We call ourselves black, color in the crayon box. That the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. Because when you identify your race, you identify who you descend from. To say I'm black, I'm Negro, what? You descended from a black crayon? No, you need to know who you descended from. Verse 5. For they have consulted together with one consent. Who is the they? The enemies. They are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom. Oh, that's the head honcho. Caucasians, Edom. I'm not making this up. And the Ishmaelites, Arabs, of Moab, Chinese, of the Hagarenes, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre, Assur also is joined with them. They have helping the children of Lot, Selah. Okay. Check out who the first enemy is named. Edom. Edom. Go to Amos chapter 1, verse 11. Actually, I want more than just verse 11. I'm going to start at verse 11. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword. Who is his brother? Jacob and Israel. I'm sorry, Jacob and Esau. Jacob is his brother. Jacob is Israel. Edom are the Caucasians. I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever. But I will send a fire upon Teman, which shall devour the palaces of Bozrah. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of the children of Ammon, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he hath ripped up the woman with child of Gilead, that they might enlarge their border. Okay, no, I don't want to go that far. I just wanted to be 11 and 12. Okay. Go to Ezekiel chapter 25, verse 12. Ezekiel, we're going to start at chapter, Ezekiel, we're going to start at verse 12. Chapter 25. Thus saith the Lord God, because that Edom hath dealt against the house of Judah by taking vengeance, and hath greatly offended and revenged himself upon them, therefore, thus saith the Lord God, I will also stretch out mine hand upon Edom, and will cut off man and beast from it, and I will make it desolate from Teman, and they of Dedan shall fall by the sword. Okay, this is the Bible. I didn't write none of this, but I do sit down and study it. And I sit down and study it on a regular basis, such that I've made myself very familiar with what it says. And I've connected dots, this passage with this passage, this precept with this precept. And then I've connected more dots. This secular writing, this secular writing, this secular writing, and understanding it and the Bible. Let's go to Sirach, chapter 12, verse 10. Sirach, chapter 12, verse 10. What does it say? Never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. This is what the Bible says. Never trust thine enemy. I didn't write this. So please don't shoot the messenger. For like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. Okay? Now let's go back to Deuteronomy chapter 32 and verse 8. Let's take a look at verse 8. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 8. When the Most High divided to the nations, that's talking about all inhabitants of earth, their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. So all divisions of the people on the planet Earth are divided according to the number of the children of Israel, so that the children of Israel can successfully manage all dealings of planet Earth, all people and all other creatures. We are to manage, we are to govern, we are to judge, we are to rule planet Earth. You so-called Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Let's go to Genesis chapter 15, verse 18 through 21. Genesis chapter 15, verse 18 through 21. In the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, unto thy seed, singular, have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates, the Kenites, and the Canaanites, and the Kadamites, and the Hittites, and the Perizzites, and the Rephaims, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. So the boundary was set. A covenant was made. The boundary was set. A covenant was made. Let's go to 2 Samuel chapter 23, verse 5. Okay. Although my house be not so with God, yet he hath made with me an everlasting covenant, ordered in all things and sure, for this is all my salvation and all my desire, although he make it not to grow. Right? This is King David speaking. This is King David speaking. He hath made an everlasting covenant. Okay. Go to 1 Chronicles chapter 17. We want verses 11 through 14. And it shall come to pass, when thy days be expired, that thou must go to be with thy fathers, that I will raise up thy seed after thee, which shall be of thy sons, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build me an house, and I will establish his throne forever. And I will be his father, and he shall be my son, and I will not take my mercy away from him, as I took it from him that was before thee, meaning Saul, right? Before thee, meaning Saul, son, meaning Solomon, because this is David that's being spoken to. Okay. Verse 14. But I will settle him in mine house and in my kingdom forever. And his throne shall be established forevermore. Right? This is the writing of the Bible. Is this just for that time period? Or does forever mean forever? Never ending. Might be interrupted, but nonetheless, never ending. Let's investigate the scriptures and find out. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 33, verses 25 through 26. Thus saith the Lord, if my covenant be not with day and night, and if I have not appointed the ordinances of heaven and earth, then will I cast away the seed of Jacob and David my servant, so that I will not take any of his seed to be rulers over the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. For I will cause their captivity to return and have mercy on them. So through analysis of the scripture, that forever means forever. It may be that it has been interrupted for a time, especially given what Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15 says, interrupted for a time, but forever means forever. Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 26. Moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them, talking about the children of Israel. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them. And I will place them and multiply them and will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore. So the Bible, the text, is providing us multiple passages revealing the covenant promise, the everlasting covenant. Multiple passages. Let's go back to 2 Samuel chapter 23, verse 5. He says, although my house be not so with God, yet he hath made with me an everlasting covenant, ordered in all things and sure. For this is all my salvation and all my desire. Okay, go to Psalms chapter 27, verse 4. Psalms chapter 27, verse 4. One thing have I desired of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. That's the thing that is desired. That is the thing that is desired. Because right now, that desire is not fulfilled. That desire we look to and hope for. Okay? Go back to 2 Samuel chapter 23, verse 5. Although my house be not so with God, yet he hath made with me an everlasting covenant, ordered in all things and sure. For this is all my salvation and all my desire, although he make it not to grow. Let's take a look at that. He make it not to grow. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 4, verse 2. In that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for them that are escaped of Israel. This is where the growth will take place. Them that escape of Israel. How do you escape? By walking in the commandments, by showing that you love Jesus Christ, by showing that you love the Father, that you are obedient, by not making excuses, by not blaspheming the Holy Spirit and saying that it is impossible to keep the commandments. When you say that, you blaspheme the Holy Ghost. When you say that it is impossible, to keep the commandments, to walk day in and day out, walking in the commandments, you blaspheme the Holy Ghost. You blaspheme the Holy Ghost. Because the scripture has told us, A, that we have to walk in the commandments. B, it told us it's not impossible to do so. It's not grievous. And so when you go against those two things, you blaspheme, you lie against the Holy Ghost. Go to Amos chapter 9, verse 11. In that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen, and close up the breaches thereof. And I will raise up his ruins, and I will build it as in the days of old. You see that? Only for a momentary time are we disconnected. Is there a breach between us and the Father? But in that day, that breach is going to be sealed. That breach is going to be closed. There will be made a connectivity. The circuits will once again be connected. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 3. Verse 6 through 7. I have planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So then, neither is he that planteth anything, neither he that watereth, but God that giveth the increase. So it's nothing special that I, Michael, does, nothing special that Elder Shamash does, nothing special that anyone does. You can't force it, neither can you stop it. This is the work of the Most High. Things that have transpired and continue to transpire currently in the moment, with us being oppressed, us being subjugated, us being tortured and vandalized. This is a momentary thing. We will stand up on our feet once again. We will no longer be dead in the streets. And we will be encouraged in the making of that day to come. Here and now, we will be encouraged. And you can't change that. Go to Genesis chapter 15, verse 18. Okay. In the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram. He made a covenant with Abram, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river of the Euphrates. Notice that the covenant came land. Go to Galatians chapter 3, we want verse 15 through 17. Brethren, I speak after the manner of men. Though it be but a man's covenant, yet if it be confirmed, no man disannulleth or addeth thereto. Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not, and to seeds, as of many, but as of one. And to thy seed, which is Christ. And this I say, that the covenant that was confirmed before of God in Christ, the law, which was 430 years after, cannot disannul, that it should make the promise of none effect. So no matter how much time has transpired, the promise, you cannot make it of none effect. It's forever and ever and ever and ever. We may be experiencing a momentary pause, a momentary setback, but it's only momentary. Go to Hebrews chapter 13, verse 20. Now the God of peace that brought again from the dead our Lord Jesus, that great shepherd of the sheep, through the blood of the everlasting covenant. right? Brought him back from the dead. Christ lives. Christ lives. Go to Hebrews chapter 9, verse 16 through 17. For where a testament is, there must also of necessity be the death of the testator. Christ had to die in order for the promises that come along with the testament to take effect. Verse 17. For a testament is of force after men are dead. Otherwise, it is of no strength at all while the testator liveth. So Christ had to die, and yet he lives. He rose on the third day, yet he lives. He died so that the testament could take full effect. Go to Job chapter 14, verse 14. Job chapter 14, verse 14. If a man die, shall he live again? All the days of my appointed time will I wait till my change come. Christ lives again. What about us? What about you and I? If we die, do we live again? Or are we in the dirt forever, 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 ever? Go to Job chapter 19, verse 25 through 26. For I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God. Yet in my flesh shall I see God. How was that, Brother Michael? Go back and look at last week's class, because we talked about regeneration in last week's class. We talked about regeneration in last week's class. But you don't believe me. Or maybe I'm taking scripture out of context. Let's go to 2 Maccabees. Second Maccabees chapter 7. We're going to start at verse 1. It came to pass also that 7 brethren with their mother were taken and compelled by the king against the law to taste swine's flesh, and were tormented with scourges and whips. But one of them that spake first said thus, What wouldest thou ask or learn of us? We are ready to die, rather than to transgress the laws of our fathers. That was the attitude of the Israelites in that day. We must have that same attitude in this day. Verse 3, then the king, being in a rage, commanded pans and cauldrons to be made hot, which forthwith being heated, he commanded to cut out the tongue of him that spake first, and to cut off the uttermost parts of his body. The rest of his brethren and his mother looking on. Now, when he was thus maimed in all his members, he commanded him, being yet alive, to be brought to the fire and to be fried in the pan. And as the vapor of the pan was for a good space dispersed, they exhorted one another with the mother to die manfully, saying thus, the Lord God looketh upon us, and in truth hath comfort in us, as Moses in his song, which witnessed to their faces, declared, saying, and he shall be comforted in his servants. So when the first was dead, after this number, they brought the second to him with a mocking stock. And when they had pulled off the skin of his head with the hair, they asked him, wilt thou eat before thou be punished throughout every member of thy body? But he answered in his own language and said, no. Wherefore he also received the next torment in order as the former did. And when he was at the last gasp, he said, thou like a fury takest us out of this present life, but the King of the world shall raise us up, who have died for his laws unto everlasting life, unto everlasting life, unto everlasting life. After him was the third made a mocking stock. And when he was required, he put out his tongue, and that right soon, holding forth his hands manfully, and said courageously, these I had from heaven, and for his laws I despise them. And from him I hope to receive them again. Insomuch that the king and they that were with him marveled at the young man's courage, for that he nothing regarded the pains. Now, when this man was dead also, they tormented and mangled the fourth in like manner. So he was ready to die. He said thus, it is good being put to death by men, to look for hope from God to be raised up again by him. As for thee, thou shalt have no resurrection to life. These men understood, and right along with the mother, that they would be resurrected to life, but not the wicked enemy. And these are Edomites, by the way, who are doing all of this damage, all of this carnage. These are Edomites doing this to these brothers. And the brothers, these are Israelites who are receiving this harm, this detriment, this torment. Okay? Go to Matthew chapter 22, verse 31 and 32. But as touching the resurrection of the dead, have ye not read that which was spoken unto you by God, saying, I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. I'm the God of the living, not of the dead. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they are alive this day. This day, this day. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 13. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 13. But if there be no resurrection of the dead, then is Christ not risen? And then he goes on and says in verse 14, and if Christ be not risen, then is our preaching vain, and your faith is also vain? Why bother? Don't talk about the Bible if you don't believe these things, these precepts that we are bringing forth. We're showing you the evidence. You don't believe? Why bother? Why bother with the Bible at all? You won't walk according to his commandments. Why bother? Why bother at all? Do you? Do your thing. That's what you're doing anyway. Okay? Go back to Job 14:14. Okay. If a man die, shall he live again? That's what Job asked. All the days of my appointed time will I wait till my change come. All the days of my appointed time will I wait. Let's close out with Job chapter 13, verse 15. Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. But I will maintain my own ways before him. And this must be your attitude, as is my attitude. We will maintain our own ways. Our own ways. You know what? Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 10. I thought that was my last passage, but I guess not. Now I beseech you, brethren, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that ye all speak the same thing, and that there be no divisions among you, but that ye be perfectly joined together in the same mind and in the same judgment. That ye be perfectly joined together in the same mind and in the same judgment. So back to what I said was the closing scripture, Job 13:15. But I will maintain my own ways before him. And what ways is that? I will walk in the commandments and the faith of Jesus Christ. And if this is not for you, it's not for you. If this is for you, all praises. Hallelujah. Now, that being said, before I give my final shalom to each and every last one of you, we pray that this has been a blessing for you, for your edification. We leave your comments below, reach out. If you're not here at the school with us, you need to be here at the school with us. So reach out so that you can find out how can you be a part of Children of Israel Ministries.
That's right.
Okay? We want to see your face. We want to be able to embrace. We want to be able to fellowship in person and discuss things of rebuilding God's kingdom. Now, with that, I say shalom, Most High in Christ bless to each and every last one of you. All right.